Well, hi everybody. My name is Father Alex. I'm the host of the Godcast. This is the first Godcast of 2024, and I'm delighted to say that my guest today is Figen Murray, OBE, and Figen is the mum of Martyn Hett, who was murdered at the Manchester Arena bombing in 2017. So it's a poignant but important interview, I feel. Do hope that you enjoy it, and if so, then please think about sharing it or subscribing to the channel. You can find me online on Twitter at AlexDJFrost. You can find me at St Matthew's Church in Burnley, where I'm the vicar. And yeah, you can find more of me in my book, Our Daily Bread from August to the Altar, which is out now. But for now, let's get 2024 Godcasts under the way. And I hope you enjoy this interview now with Figen Murray, OBE. Well, Figen, it's lovely to welcome you to the Godcast today. How are you?
Very well, thank you. It's a new year, new start. Yep. Feel refreshed.
Yeah, I can't help wondering how Christmases are for you, since the events of 2017.
Well, you know what? There's always somebody missing at the table. It's although I have five kids in total and grandkids, it's really odd because he's he's there in spirit in our hearts, but he's not physically there. So he was always loving Christmas and the life and soul of the party at every Christmas dinner table, and that energy is just not there.
As the mum of the family, Figen, do you kind of feel the responsibility to kind of keep it festive, to keep it jovial the best you can, or
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just at Christmas, it's also on Mother's Day, on his birthday, on on the anniversary. It feels like really difficult. In honesty, I just want to curl up and go in a corner and cry and grieve, but I can't do that because I have an obligation towards my other family members, the children in particular, who are also grieving. So I need to, because they look at me, I'm almost a thermometer of how they're allowed to feel. If I'm down, then they don't feel upbeat. So I feel I'll try and be upbeat for them, really.
and does it get easier, or is it as painful?
No.
No.
This saying, time is a good healer. In principle, it might be, but actually, when you lose somebody to a terrorist attack, the violent nature of it, it kind of leaves a really strange cloud above your head. That's with you wherever you go. You laugh and joke, and you celebrate events, and you go for meals and holidays. But that cloud is always there with you wherever you go.
Yeah. And for people who are maybe picking up Martyn's story for the first time today, Figen, just tell us a bit about him. I've been reading about him, and he sounded like a bundle of joy and a mad Corrie fan.
Was, yeah, he was. He was absolutely loving life and really excited about every day. He was just, you knew when he was in the room, that's for sure. And he was a very sociable creature, always talking to strangers and having a laugh. And he had, and we didn't find this out until after his death. He had this ability to make every single person he met and he engaged with feel that they are the most important person in their life. We had so many people, strangers, random people, say to us, "Oh, you don't know me," and I met Martyn once, but he was my best friend. And so many people described him as his best friend. That's when we realized how special a skill he had to do that. Um, he had a great deal of empathy and compassion. And yeah, so, but then unfortunately, he loved pop music and he went to the concert with his friends, really excited that day. He was also planning a trip to North America the same week he was going to go. And he went to the Ariana Grande concert with 10 or 11 of his mates and very sadly didn't make it out alive.
Yeah.
and he was killed in the terrorist attack.
And I've read and watched some interviews with you, Figen, where you just said that you sensed on that day when you heard the news that something was terrible. Was that
Yeah.
right?
It was really strange because I had gone to bed early that evening because the only two of my five kids still living at home were my youngest two daughters. At the time, they were 16 and 19. The 16-year-old, she was in her bedroom revising for her GCSEs, which had literally just started. My older daughter Louise, she was in her bedroom. She was doing an undergraduate course at Manchester Uni, and she had an art exhibition that was being marked the day after. So she had artwork all over her bedroom floor and was very busy selecting pieces. So I couldn't disturb her either. My husband was doing paperwork downstairs. And I'd been seeing clients all day. So I thought, well, catch up on some sleep, be sensible, go to bed early. So I did. I went to bed at 10, which is unlike me, but fell asleep instantly. But I'm a really light sleeper. And then I was aware that one of my children was stood next to me, next to my bed. And it was Louise, the older one, with my phone. And she explained that she had my phone because she was checking if Martyn tried to ring or text her. And then I asked, well, why would he do that? And she said, well, he's been out with friends and there's been an incident. And then I said, what do you mean by incidents? And she said, there's been an explosion at the arena. And I leapt out of bed. We went downstairs, and obviously his friends who were with him, they kept texting us saying, have you heard from him yet? Has he been in touch yet? And my husband went to bed because he said, look, that's such a huge place. He'll have left the concert early to get drinks for his friends. Don't worry. His phone will be out of battery. You know what he's like. Um, and he said he'll ring you in the morning, don't worry, And Louise and I stayed up communicating with his friends, watching what's on social media, watching the news. And probably, so the attack happened 22:31, and probably about 16, 17 minutes past 11, about 45 minutes after the attack, I had it was a really physical sensation. It felt like somebody gently punched me in the stomach, and I went, ow. And Louise said, what's the matter? And I said, I don't know, Louise, but I have this weird feeling in my stomach. I said, and I was processing, talking and processing at the same time. I said, it's really strange. I suddenly can't feel him anymore. In fact, I've got absolutely no sense of him. There's nothingness. Feels like somebody's cut off the connection with some scissors. In fact, it feels like he's not even on the planet anymore. And then I looked at her once I sort of processed all that was happening, sort of bit by bit. I said to her, your brother is dead. And she burst out crying. She said, don't say that. And I said, there's absolutely nothing. Your brother is gone. So I just
Okay.
knew. I just
Yeah.
knew.
Gosh. And when that was confirmed, Figen,
Mm. Yeah,
how do you process that? I mean, my job as a priest, I deal with people's grief, but in that circumstance is this is not somebody who's lived a long life and who's
yeah,
had an illness. This is somebody who's basically had their life taken away from them.
yeah.
Can you recall those hours and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
seconds?
So in the morning, the morning after the attack, very early morning, there was a message on TV just the one time saying, if you need information and support, go to the Etihad. Now I needed to know where his body is. So I had this urge to go to the arena, to the Etihad Stadium. And my husband, I said to him, I need to go, he was about to go to work. And he said, oh, you can't go there on your own. I'll come with you. You see, months after what happened, I said to him, why did you come with me that morning? You never miss work. He misses work for nothing. He always goes to work. Doesn't matter how important an issue is. Work always came first. But that morning, he didn't go to work. He cancelled his surgery as a GP. And as I said, months later, I said, why did you come with me? And he said, as soon as you said Etihad Stadium, I fully expected the whole playing field, football field, covered with dead bodies, and you have to go and identify him. Now, that hadn't even occurred to me, but it's logical that he thought that. but when we went to the arena, so he came with me. We went 7:30 in the morning, got there about just before 8, and bit by bit there were more and more families turning up. And after 6 o'clock, when they were able to finally take the dead bodies out of the building, because the glass roof was in danger of collapsing, so they had scaffolding up and obviously needed to do forensic stuff. And then at 6 o'clock, they started to take the bodies out. And one by one, we could see tables of a whole family being called in a side room. And then 10 minutes later, they'd emerge in floods of tears. And then they'd pick up their stuff and went. And we knew they had bad news. And then in the evening, about 20 to 10, there were only 2 families left, but only one more dead body. So we knew it was either them or us, and then we were the next ones to be called in. So we were in this big room with a big, big, long table, and the family liaison officer gave us the bad news. Although I knew Martyn was dead, I suddenly felt, when I heard it said, I felt super glued to the floor. I couldn't move. And suddenly everything around me was like a film that I was watching at close proximity, but I couldn't partake somehow. I saw my oldest son go to the corner, watch the football field, didn't want to be with anybody. He shooed people away if they approached him. One of my daughters dived under the table. I think she was going to go to the other side to comfort somebody. Um, and so you watch as a parent watching your other children disintegrate and in front of you, and all his friends were there who were with him that night. It was surreal, and it's something I don't want any other parent to go through. It's horrendous.
Gosh, and how did your maternal instincts deal with that? You know, because you've got the shock and your
Yeah,
own grief that kind of comes flooding in,
yeah,
but then you describe those loved ones who go to
yeah,
into their own world
yeah,
for
yeah.
those moments.
It was very difficult. So we all went home. I said to all of them, there were about 25, 30 of us. I said, everybody come to our house. And to be honest, we sat up drinking till 4 o'clock in the morning, vodka and Diet Coke, which was Martyn's favorite drink. And we were reminiscing and laughing and joking. And joking is kind of a weird way of dealing with grief, but it was helpful. It was helpful to my children. They were cracking jokes about their brother. It was helpful. Their friends joined in. His friends joined in making jokes, and of course, in between that, we cried, we hugged. So it was a mixture of emotions that was quite difficult.
I think that's a really key thing for people who might watch this who are dealing with their own grief, that to say that the permission is there to laugh, isn't it? It is actually part of the healing process. Would you agree with that?
Totally. I agree with that totally, because Martyn was such a fun guy. He was the kind of guy who could make a shopping trip that is tedious one of the best experiences ever. He had this knack of making people laugh. I was very much the butt of his jokes often. I'd be washing up and he'd say, Mum, and I'd turn around and he'd slap me across the face with pita bread that was left over from dinner. And his friend, of course, would film it, and then it would be on YouTube somewhere. And he always, always pulled my leg. And I missed that jokey side that he had. But had we all just cried and been grieving in a sad way, I think we would have all done him a disservice of who he actually was as a human being. He just loved life. He just loved fun. He had
Mm.
fun in life, you know.
Yeah, he sounds a joy,
Mm.
Figen, and in those impending days after what had happened, I'm intrigued to understand how you deal with your own grief, but then you see the grief of a city and a region. I mean, if I'm in Burnley, and Manchester is our go-to city. It feels we're part of it, and that applied to, and then it became a grief of the nation, didn't it? Was that
Yeah,
was that helpful? Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, just
Yeah,
tell us a bit about that,
yeah.
Figen.
I felt real support. I mean, it's the support and kindness of strangers, total strangers, quite often from Manchester, but even nationally and worldwide, that got us through. But the support from Manchester was incredible. But I can kind of understand it because, you know, this guy didn't target Martyn or Safi or Megan or anybody else who died. He didn't care who he killed. He just wanted to kill as many people as possible. But because of where it was, the arena was part of the hub of Manchester. Any one of us in the city will have attended there, a function or an event, a concert or whatever at some point in their life. You know, they do Disney on Ice there for small children.
Yeah.
It's one of those places where we can all relate to in Manchester. And I think the people of Manchester saw the attack as a personal attack on each one of them. So everybody felt attacked and everybody suddenly pulled together, you know, and started saying, not in our city, we are not having this, and we are going to support and unite and come together and deal with this together. And that was so heartwarming. It really was.
And I sometimes think about Ariana Grande in this,
Yeah.
and how she coped with that. Was
Yeah.
there any dialogue with her?
Yeah, so the bereaved families and some of the more injured, severely injured people, she invited us to meet her within the week of the attack. We had to go to this secret location and waited for 2, 3 hours. And eventually, each family got about 10, 15 minutes with her. And when we went in to see her, I gave her a hug and I said, look, you need to really look after yourself as well. It's very kind of you that you meet us all, but you are also a victim of a terrorist attack, and this may have personal impact on you. Make sure you look after yourself. And she cried, you know, and she obviously later on down the line, months down the line, it had impacted her more than she gave it credit. So
Yeah,
I see her as a victim of the attack as well.
yeah. And in those, as the weeks went by, Figen and there was the One Love concert. Did you go to that concert?
We did, yes, we went as a family, and it was a bit of a blur because we were all still quite traumatized. We went and we met loads of the other families. There was a lot of hugging and crying. But again, the support, there was a really eerie moment actually because all the families were collected by double-decker buses, big yellow buses. And we bypassed all the queues. There were such long queues. The buses just went past right to the front of the queue. And we were then obviously disembarking and walking over to the stadium. And the general public, there was an eerie silence, and everybody started clapping. And that felt so, again, the support and love was so obvious. But they didn't stop clapping. All 7, 8 buses throughout that, people clapped. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it it's mind blowing, isn't it? It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
is. And Figen, in that atrocity that occurred, you've got, like you say, you've got the trauma of that, but then you've got the kindness and the love that's being expressed. How do you balance that? I mean, that must be quite, you've got the anger, I suppose.
no,
No, there
no
was no
anger,
anger. Tell
no
tell
anger,
us.
no, no,
No.
no, no anger. People make assumptions that I have been angry, like maybe people would be. Some members of my family have been angry. I have never been angry right from the beginning. In fact, just under 4 weeks after the attack, I went on national TV and publicly forgave the terrorist. Maybe that's due to my previous job as a therapist. I had first of all, the ability to self-regulate and also the ability to step back as part of my job, to step back and look at the bigger picture. And I looked at the bigger picture very early on in my more lucid moments. And because I was in part zombified, as you can imagine. But in my more lucid moments, I literally stepped back and looked at the very, very big picture. And what I realized is that actually this guy was only 22, 23, so young, so young. And I thought, gosh, at that age, what do you know about the world? How can you even understand what you've done, the impact of what you've done, and the reason why you would throw your own life away? Why would you even do that? How can you even understand it? And I decided that he wasn't born a terrorist. Nobody's born as a terrorist. People's minds get influenced and poisoned by ideologies, and that's the reason I go to schools now, to try and stop young people from even going down that route. But actually, more importantly, it made me able to forgive the guy, because I thought, you were not born a bad person. Somebody put that in your head. And therefore it became quite easy for me to forgive. And I feel it's the right thing to do. Um, and I stand by it. It is what it is.
I think that's remarkable, Figen. In my job, people often come to me and bring up the subject of forgiveness, and they tell me
Yeah.
how difficult it is to forgive. And I think just listening to what you've just said is profound, really. Were you raised as a lady of a child of faith, Figen,
Not
or is
at
this
all.
something
No.
that
I hate to tell you, but I'm not at all religious. I've never been raised religious. But I do believe in that somehow. I somehow the universe engineered me to do my therapy training all those years ago, decades ago. And maybe the true reason was to help me cope with what's happening rather than just help other people. It equipped me. I think without my training, I may have gone under. I may not have been able to forgive and look at the bigger picture. I may not have been able to self-regulate and deal with my emotional fallout from all of this.
yeah,
Um, I stepped down from my job because I recognized it would be unethical for me to continue working as a therapist. That was a hard thing to do because it was my career, I had my own business. But yeah,
yeah,
but I also feel that um, I have a belief that our destiny is written for us from the moment we are conceived.
yeah,
And it was Martyn's time to go. As difficult as it is for me to accept that or come to terms with it, it was his time to go. In fact, Martyn had funeral instructions in the finest details on his laptop. And he always said to us, I'm going to die before my 30th birthday, and I'm going to die a spectacular death.
gosh,
And unfortunately, everything came true.
goodness me. And your skills and your expertise, if you don't mind me asking, that's not something your family have, or I presume they haven't
Mm.
gone into that line of work.
No.
Has that helped you to help them, or has that been a
So
hindrance in their
yeah,
healing?
yeah. No, it was helpful because my husband's a GP, so he also has because of the stuff he deals with professionally, he also has similar skills to self-regulate. However, it was really helpful. One of my daughters, the then 19-year-old, at the beginning, after the funeral or just before the funeral, they kept watching me, my kids. Certainly the two who were still living at home, they kept watching me. The others kept checking, texting me, are you okay, mom? Everybody was looking at me as Martyn's mom to see if I fall apart or not. And I did my crying in front of the children occasionally, and they'd hug me and I'd hug them back. And that was important because it gave them permission to cry. I did my main crying in the middle of the night, and didn't need to talk about why I'm crying. It was obvious. I cried a lot in the car when I was on my own. That was and it's still to this day, actually, that is where I cry, in the car when I'm on my own. Um, and I heard of another bereaved mother who does exactly the same. But one of my daughters said to me months later, had you not responded the way you did, I would have fallen apart. And then my husband chipped in when she said that and said, yeah, actually, he said, had you got really angry and depressed and he said, I've got a stressful job. I would have come home every night to a stressful environment. But you didn't do that. It was, I came home every night and you are okay. You're normal, and so it's compartmentalizing my grief and enough to make sure that my kids can see me grieve and get upset so that
Yeah.
they can do it,
Yeah.
but not do it over the top.
I just know, Figen, people are going to watch this and think you are a remarkable woman, by your honesty and your coping strategies. Um, just let's move on a little bit because um, Martyn's funeral, from the media that I've seen, looked like a complete celebration of the
Yes.
life that you described, and some of his heroes from Corrie were there.
Hmm.
But then you turn into this campaign for Martyn's Law, don't you? Was
Yeah.
this something that you felt was to, you know, to give memory to Martyn's life, or was it something else?
It's something else actually. Obviously, I do it. It's I'm Martyn's voice as his mother. But so the first year after Martyn died, we didn't do much. I lost my job. Everybody went back to uni, school, work, but I didn't. I was at home a lot, and I had a lot of time to think. And then in the first year, one of my daughters, bought my husband some concert tickets for a singer he likes, and that was a Father's Day gift in June. But the concert was that year in December, 18 months after the attack. And I remember getting ready and changing all my bits into my tiniest handbag, which was literally just enough for my mobile phone and tissues. And naively, I thought that'll make the bag search easy because we went into Manchester to a theatre. And I honestly expected, in particular in Manchester, after the attack, that security is going to be top notch.
Mm.
And when we got there, nobody checked my bag, nobody checked Stuart. In fact, nobody even checked our entrance tickets. We walked in, he said, "Oh, on the ticket, it looks like we're upstairs." We walked upstairs, sat down, and um, and during the concert, I was so upset I cried. And my husband said, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Because nobody checked my bag." And then I started researching security at venues online, came across the government's contest document, which is their counter-terrorism strategy document. And there it was in black and white that security at venues is only a recommendation, it's not mandatory. And I thought, how can that be? I was outraged. And I thought, this is not okay. No other parent should be in my situation. I've got here my son's urn and his cat's urn on a shelf here in front of me. That's what motivates me. And nobody should be like this in their own home, having their child on a bookshelf. So I started an online campaign, which only lasted 6 months, and that would have been the end of it. But then Brendan Cox, who lost his wife in a terror attack the year before, Joe Cox's husband, the MP Joe Cox, he contacted me and he said, "Look, I've seen your campaign. I believe it's the right thing to do. I've got contacts in government. I'll sit you in front of a minister." And that's exactly what we did. He introduced me to somebody from Scotland Yard who then put everything in writing that we were wanting to do. And the three of us have become the campaign team. And I have, since the start of the campaign now, I'm on Prime Minister number 4, Security Minister number 6, and Home Secretary number 3. So, um, but we work with the Home Office quite closely, and I do a lot of talks about it. I've done hundreds of talks on the subject. The legislation will happen later this year, but it's been a long slog from the 6-month petition.
Yeah, you've got to be resilient and determined and keep going, haven't
Yeah, well, I have nothing else to do, so my focus is on Martyn's Law. And I remember sitting in the first security minister's office, and he said to me before we end the meeting, "Is there a final word?" And I said, "Actually, yes, Minister. As you can see, I'm only 5 foot short, but I did read somewhere if you think small is not effective, you have never been in bed with a mosquito. I'm that mosquito, and I won't go anywhere until this is done. I'll be buzzing around yours and the government's head until it's done. So, and I
Well,
use social media and
yeah,
LinkedIn to keep putting pressure on the government.
yeah. And what's your relationship with Manchester now,
Manchester
Figen?
is super. So Manchester have, about three years ago, the council asked me to join one of their big meetings. So I went, and they said, "What would you like us to do to support you with this legislation?" And I said, "Don't wait, just start it." And they did. So they are in Manchester. They have monthly training. It's free of charge training. Anybody can go. A lot of businesses, the nightclubs, the restaurants, the pubs, the banks, hotels, retail businesses, they're all going and sending their staff to do the training. It's a 3.5 hour event. You get a certificate at the end, and you're far more knowledgeable about terrorism and what to look out for. So Manchester hasn't waited, and I have a really good relationship with them. In fact, I try and go to every event and speak for 10 minutes at the beginning to personally thank everybody who attends, because I'm really grateful that people would do that. So Manchester is super.
Yeah. Figen, it's been fascinating listening to you. I'm so grateful for your time. What does the future hold?
Well, I need to see Martyn's Law through till the end, till it's done. And I would imagine there's going to be a period of embedment for a few years, because change is not easy. People, we're social creatures. We don't like change. Um, and so I'm going to try and be supportive as a voice for Martyn's Law in the background for the next few years. Maybe I'll do a PhD. I've done a master's in counterterrorism, but my tutor keeps urging me to do a PhD. Maybe if I find myself getting bored, I might just do that, but not certain. But I
Yeah,
certainly am staying in the field of counterterrorism now.
yeah. Do you keep in touch with the families who are
Um,
affected?
we haven't really, because simply because of the nature of the attack, obviously, people came from all over the place, and uh, we were in court together daily, some of the families, and with some of them I'm sort of in text contact. But we all come from geographical different areas, and life's busy. Certainly the legislation is taking up. It's turned actually into a full-time unpaid job.
Yeah,
I do literally do it every day, all day. I travel up and down the country, but also abroad, because it's it's um it's caused a lot of international interest, because
yeah.
there's no legislation like that anywhere in the world.
And people watching this, Figen, can they help in any way? Is there anything we can
Um,
do?
do you know, I'm a big believer in the nation becoming more resilient and raise awareness. Knowledge is power. I'd love every adult to do the ACT e-learning training, which is on a website called Protect UK. And you also have an app, Protect UK. Download the app, but do the training. It's 45 minutes online, and it could save your life potentially, you know.
Well, I'm going to do it if that's what you think
Yeah.
we can do.
Absolutely, because the thing is, since 2014, when there was an ISIS spokesman who said, "Don't bother training in Syria and Libya. Just, the police are wise to us; they'll arrest you when you try and fly out. Keep it simple. Just use a car, use a stone, use poison, use a knife. Just kill people." And that has been the start, 2014, from on with lone actors, self-initiated terrorists. People go online and get radicalized, then take a knife or car or whatever and start killing people. So that training equips you with the knowledge of what to do. And once you know that, you can't unlearn it. So it's really good training. So I recommend it to all adults.
Yeah. Thank you, Figen. And people who who want to pay their respects, there's the Glade of Light garden, isn't there?
That's right,
Which
yes.
I have visited myself, and it seems a fitting tribute.
It
It's a
is.
special place, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, and you are an inspiring lady. It's been a real privilege to meet you today, Figen, and thank you for your honesty and your openness, and I hope people have enjoyed listening to the Godcast today. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words and thanks for having me on your podcast.